You're gonna have to hold it.
Okay. Yep.
True decriminalization is public legalization of the only option to just the effects of President Jeffries said true decriminalization does not exist. True decriminalization is possible for legislators anymore aware of the public position with the industry to organize for violence against women. The problem is situating the industry within the community seeking to address the state regulation through legalized regime. Next, current forms of legalization regulations, sex work continue to create the same violence as well prostitution that they were created to change. That's 97. Patterns of legal regulation create the phenomenon of prostitution with feminists of endeavors to create legal responses that work thoroughly criminalizing with the act of prostitution legal in Pennsylvania illegal in such places as no prostitutes continue to work in legal street prostitution because of the dangerous conditions of the law, because selective enforcement of prostitution law, use by the police harass prostitutes, and the code system to criminalize street prostitution with red light district. There is considerable work convergence with the actual rights between sex work and the police. Next, regulations are certainly inevitable now. We should settle it for the terrible way they've been implemented. Debating about regulation within the wider context of legal codes, social norms, and press sex work and schemes. That's 97. Criminal law specific sexually are hardly the only social forces. Prostitutes groups support the eliminating prostitution within the laws. A world without prostitution, because the laws is not a world without lacking in legal and economic sources that affect sexual advocates and decriminalization. Maybe actively capitalist economies that operates to disempower and oppress sex work. It is important not to ignore which ways in which distinction between prostitution and legitimate work reinforce these oppressive structures. And prostitutes are not simply sexually indiscriminate, willing to do anything for money, nor are they desperate victims in need. And say the current debates on prostitution entrench this dominant narrative without ever understanding that individual prostitutes have a story that not only victimization but have strength and resistance. The actual stories of prostitutes highlight the nuance of their experiences and subject position is critical to break down pathologies and stigmas. Who show 13 stories spoken power, resistance, victimization, perseverance, dominant narrative about prostitution, pure problematic. Their image of prostitutes reduce women with prostitution fears to others, constitute dirty, sexually indiscriminatory, really do anything for money or desperate, victimize. These had effects that now power relations, knowledge, and discourse and practice to connect dominant narratives about prostitution affect people's attitudes toward people involved in prostitution. They occupy multiple subject positions, however they don't share the experience of being categorized as prostitute stigmatory dominant narratives and severe impacts on women's sense of self-materialized and traumatic events of violence and the rights of their bodies. And current regulations are shaped and create absent the voices of prostitutes. The exclusion is justified via the prostitute pathology and understand that their depraved disease and abuse. Code 5, the claim that prostitutes' right position or represent only small and or not justified dismissing their inclusion in the perspective of prostitutes rather than dismissing prostitution due with the commercial sex industry. The sense leading voices justified by the pathology and then because prostitutes have been viewed as a depraved disease. Social science research indicates that disproportionate number of people prostitute population are child sexual assaults, whereas these voices are pathologies as products of false consciousness used to justify lumping all prostitutes in the voice of categorizing victim masochistically seeking to continue abuse which justifies in their position. This test basis in no way suggests they're not credible or insightful regarding prostitution policy. These involved in the anti-domestic violence movements have been exposed to the domestic violence. This did not suggest that this movement dismissed the voices of anti-domestic violence workers. It was viewed as giving these voices special authority. The fact that disproportionate percent of prostitutes appear to be child sexual assault proves that nothing about the anti-abolition prostitute voices in the development of prostitute policy. And this exclusion is not abstract. It's been institutionalized by government and police force. A legitimate policy because the price you pay as a prostitute becomes a part of the trade. The logic of protecting vulnerable have been flipped. The pathology of prostitution mean they have already given up their right to consent in the dominant perspective. Price 3, the private public share publicly their voice is no authority. Their testimony is displayed while on the street. There are signs in private spaces. Things over John's confidence or his police enforcement with the spaces of prostitutes occupied the bonds to which prostitutes are erased or permanent institutionally. One woman I can't tell you the countless times I've heard the police say that prostitutes can't be right. Their attitude that prostitutes were rendered their right to withhold consent suggests that violence is one of these conditions. These perceptions eclipse other sets of perceptions for women who work in prostitution. They find the dominant perspective ridiculous. They have to live with it. And the pathology relies on victimized stereotypes, reinforces racist and exclusionary stereotypes. Compared to the victim subject creates an exclusionary category of racism stereotypes to third world women. This empowers to produce the victim of a universal system embodying victims and violence. There is no space for difference in the articulation of somebody that doesn't empower the different. The subject collapses easily into colonial assumptions and feeds into conservative agendas for when it encourages states to resort to criminal law, which nation states enjoy moral surveillance and regulation. And militarized humanitarianism, neo-abolition, and narrative of good versus evil portray damsels in the press and the corporate state as saviors. This crops with the gender militarized humanitarianism that deflects responsibility from privilege that leads to deviant society, naming brown and black people and domestically and abroad. The neo-abolitionist narrative complex forms of migration and civil portrayal of victims of crime and precludes understanding traffic women being migrant sex workers attempting to meet their own needs for responding to labor demands in the West. This representation suggests that women should be rescued and reported, that the government should aggressively force them to punish laws and deviant elements. Criminalization recast big business in the state and police as allies in favor of the enemies of unskilled workers. It deflects attention from the dependence on big business and on cheap workers who populate the unregulated labor sector. Obvious structural factors that push individuals to migrate under condition capitalism, tropes, violence, femininity, and victimization of women, children, militarized humanitarianism, carceral feminism, rape and trafficking against issues of privilege can combat by supporting efforts to punish depraved individual neo-abolition, including the demand for prostitution, the driving force by accept trafficking. The source of the harm lies not for the institution of corporate capitalism in the state, but in the deviant foreign brown men or even African American women living in the inner city against whom full power criminal law must be brought against. The The government and society are all responsibility for providing socioeconomic conditions that feed trafficking, and gender militarized humanitarianism is responsible for endless wars of 11. Imperial democracy utilize racial and gender ideology that militarize all domains of social life and discipline all state subject regimes, kill and imprison and deploy violence in the name of war on terror and security. Militarize also involves masculinization, generalization, and links to state project, imperial feminist projectors about the bringing of democracy to oppressed women who vouch as justification for war. Women serve as allies in neo-colonial adventure and war-making securitized regimes use connecting strategies, militarization, criminalization, incarceration to mobilize on the logic of masculine protectionism to create a sustained endless work on normalizing incarceration regimes, the masculine securitized ideology based not on defense of the nation but on coercion. The rhetoric of a condition of women such as the pretext for occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan creates struggles until death between the West and the East. And securitized humanitarian co-ops risk analysis trafficking discourse creates a blank check for violence and root of war. Humanitarian discourse constructs around women's suffering can be reconciled with security subjects of government through risk, making it impossible for trafficked women to become dangerous. Eruption risk confer identity upon trafficked women provides an explanation for vulnerability constructed victim seems women is a risk of illegal migration to neutralize this area of discipline risk management because the insidious presence of the humanitarian discourse of human rights become the rights of those who are too oppressed to actualize them. They are not they're deprived of political agency. The only rights are rights to practice interventions planned. The United States should remove all criminal prohibitions and penalties and regulate facilitators for nearly all prostitution in the United States. Restrictions on facilitators to solve abuse problems can be created to encourage prostitutes to form their own organization or self-employed co-5. Organized facilitators require register and pay license to be allowed prostitutes themselves. Organized restriction is intended less than exploitation. The government would set in place policies and programs that would encourage the shift from traditional organization and facilitation to genuine self-employment, lessen abuse and private prostitutes for greater control over the condition of their work, and the plan allows for sex worker unions to give sex work control over narratives surrounding prostitutes key to subvert victimist conflation of trafficking and prostitution. Content. Prostitution opens a formation of new identities not based on passivity and exploitation. Victimhood of sex work is not itself that promotes oppression, but the cultural and legal production of marginalized, degraded prostitution while acting limits the subversive potential that might attempt to legitimize sex work. Who control the meaning of the word sex work unions to be an example of victim of commodification of appropriating change and bind them. The refusal to mark the difference between rape and sex for money implies that prostitutes are publicly available to be raped, sufficient held by law enforcement first perpetuates the sense of those who are unwilling to end up in prostitution or deserve of protection. In an ideal world, sex would not be commodified, nor in our non-ideal world, someone would face a choice between selling sex and letting themselves or their children go hungry. And non-stigmatized legislation is key to allow sex work to organize and fight, facilitate, or abuse. That's 97. As long as prostitution is criminalized, sex workers' access to institutional power and ability to organize frustrated by legal marginalization, police are constant threat, exclusion from social benefits, burdens, encourage reliance on things to organize crime and drug trafficking, legal, recognize prostitution and prostitutes at work with all the intended rights and protections of free restrictions and stigmatized limitation with the police would offer concrete improvements on the lives of sex work. And collectives are key coalition prevents exclusion and enable cohesive movements against violence. Robin Margie 10. Inexcusable build of analysis and experience around inclusion that stipulate only women can understand feminine experience that has become a problematic politics. But movements such as radical feminism movement for purity have yielded isolationism consequences fallacy that social relations can be reformed without the agreement of others who constitute relations strategic and essential to make solidary difficult posits collective identification and particular standard to prerequisite for action. Sexism is not to deal with alone, but to situate in relationship and require mutual agreement, not for movement to be subsumed, but for a movement to conceive it inclusively, where members are not restricted. Those resume to suffer existential rhetoric, establish belonging. Unshared experiences, community becomes oppressive to those who articulate differences between the community, may be weakened in its resistance to other forms of oppression by its internal policing. And their impact framing, fatalistic scenarios that don't need to be proven, only plausible, defaults to quick fix policy making that ignore structural flaws and underlying causes, Hyman and capital D12. The formation that defines risk as likely to multiply or impact and influence how insecurity is understood and handled with likely to discredit an analysis of natural patterns focusing on these themes means that the registered project this problematic in the case of risk rely on social action, the capability of adopting new types of behavior. They leave little room for alternative direction. The reliance on past experiences prove risk negates this requirement to prove these issues, while analysis of harm reveals damage about its approach with limited use and understanding how public change or creative risk assessment do not ask why or how one's actions might be complicit. Ready for Cossacks.
Okay. Is the judge ready?
Yep.
So looking at your last piece of evidence that you wrote, what exactly is the impact here? What's the purpose of the evidence?
The last part that we read?
Yeah, is that like anticipation of arguments you're going to bring up? What?
It's basically like framing what impact should be weighted most heavily in the round.
And you argue which one should?
Ours.
Okay, so the impacts, okay, well, but the question here is, I mean, do you focus on any, or it's just your impacts are the most important in the round? Is that what you're arguing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So then you mentioned decriminalization earlier on. So your plan is not decriminalization, correct?
What our Jeffries 10 card is establishing is the difference between decriminalization and legalization. We're establishing regulations, which is we're decriminalizing and then adding regulations. That's the
Wait, so
difference.
who's adding these regulations?
I'm sorry, what?
Who's adding these regulations? Federal government or states?
We don't, whatever is necessary.
Whatever is
Whatever
necessary.
is necessary.
Okay, you mentioned broadest conditions that feed trafficking. I think it's in your Hong 10 evidence. You did cite several Hong 10 evidences. I apologize. Hold on a second.
Can you pull that up? My Word document.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's the neo-abolitionist evidence. So what are the broader socioeconomic conditions that feed trafficking that you are arguing for here? What are the alternative conditions that feed trafficking here, accepting neoliberal motives? Like, the evidence basically argues from the abolitionist perspectives, right? It's from the
No, it's
okay.
saying
What's
that-
the argument?
Okay, essentially, it's saying that right now in the status quo, we equate prostitutes as victims. That's how we, that's the way we discuss this. That's how we
So-
refer to them in politics. And this, what this card is saying is that just, like, we intervene in other countries. Like that card, I think specifically notes. Okay, no, it wasn't that hard. Just kidding. But it's basically talking about how we justify intervention because we want to like save these victims essentially.
Okay.
And that's
Okay. So they're not victims then.
not exclusively victims.
Okay, so they're choosing in this regard to practice prostitution, right? That's their choice.
Not everyone. It's mainly
But the majority.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. So,
Prep or ESA?
yeah, I think